Thank you very much, and thank you to the IAC for the opportunity to be here today with my very distinguished colleagues for what I hope will be an interesting conversation around engagement in space. This week has so many great activities going on, and we are at the conclusion of one event and just the beginning of the next. And what we'll talk about in a little bit, you'll see a video in just a moment about World Space Week. I'll say a little bit more about what that is. But the broader theme of all of this is how to engage and inspire everyone across the world in relationship to space. And so that the amazing things that we see from an engineering standpoint and a business standpoint and culturally, and the benefits of collaboration and working together for humanity, all of those come from an exciting foundation around space. So with that, I think we'll start with a short video. Then we'll introduce our colleagues here and we'll start a discussion. Thank you. Well, that's inspiring every time I see it. And just so you see the dates, the 4th through the 10th of October, so just beginning, those dates were established by the United Nations General Assembly in 1999. And the two dates, the 4th and the 10th, are not just an arbitrary week. They both have significance. The 4th is the anniversary of the launch of the first artificial step by humans into space, the Sputnik. And the second, the 10th, was the date of the signing of the Foundational Outer Space Treaty, which sets forth very aspirational and foundational objectives and agreements among the nations for how we will use space and how we will use it peacefully. So it's a great sort of framing for what we have done and where we hope to be going. And it's every year during this time. So with this, I will turn to my colleagues and I'll ask each of them just briefly to introduce themselves, and I'll have a question to go along with that introduction. I am going to first off start with one apology and a correction. My colleague Atsushi, you see his photograph correctly, but unfortunately the name did not get updated, and that due to my oversight. But with that, why don't we just start with Atsushi, and then we can go down and I'll ask each of my colleagues to briefly provide a little background of themselves, and then also to share just one thing that excites them about space. Please, Atsushi.
I'm very pleased to be here. My name is Atsushi Takara. Apparently, I'm not the correct Jacob, so that's okay. I'm from the business side, a company based in Tokyo called Space Data. We've been creating the International Space Station digital twin model, which is an exact the digital model, like full scale, and including the environmental thing. So you can simulate a lot of things and gaming on the digital twin. And so I'm very excited to share what we have done, and also how I strongly believe the power of the space for the future generations. And my excitement about space is I have one daughter who is 5 years now, and by the time she gets like 20s or 18s, I'd like to create a world where the people who can choose to go to space easily. So I'd like to make such world. So that's my vision and excitement.
Thank you. Candace.
That is so wonderful that you're doing this digital twin. I just absolutely love it. So my name is Candace Johnson. I've been in space since I was 5 years old, when indeed, in 1957, when the Sputnik was launched on October 4th, I received a toy Sputnik with Santa Claus inside from my parents to hang on the Christmas tree. And from that day on, I was convinced that everything good comes from space, and I still am. So the way that I describe this life in space is, first, I used space to provide universal access. Universal access via satellite television for people to have freedom of choice in their viewing and listening habits. Then satellite telecommunications for people to be able to use satellite to communicate no matter where they were, to satellite mobile communications. I was one of the founding teams of Iridium, to also doing launch vehicles with international launch services between Lockheed Martin and Khrushchev in Russia, and then to accessing the universe with space, so doing precision agriculture, weather prediction, using the GPS system for all of the financial data, to now what I'm calling about networks for the universe. And so this is really the idea that with the James Webb Telescope, we now have near space, far space, and the planet all in one. And so I'm working on logistic, transport, communication networks, using digital twins to be able to, communicate with Mars and the moon, doing data centers on the moon. And I am also a very, very proud founder of SES, which is one of the world's largest satellite systems. So happy. And I think the most thing that I'm excited about is actually today. I don't know about you, but I had tears in my eyes when I was seeing these young people just going and discovering all of the great things that space can do.
Thank you. I think that is remarkable that you've been inspired since you were a little girl. And I think I was quite similar. So my name is Sarah. I'm an astrophysicist by training, a science communicator, and just an all-round space nerd. And I think mine started about 5 years old as well. And I think I scared my mother because I woke her up one day, really woke her up holding the blanket saying, "Where does the universe end?" And this is 7 a.m. I needed to go to school and my mum didn't have the answer. And so she was an incredible mum who figured out I needed to be satiated with knowledge. So I went to lots of museums, watched lots of documentaries, read too many books, just had so much fun as a child learning, and it never stopped. And so I always knew I wanted to be an astrophysicist because I needed to answer what's at the end of the universe. And I'm very sad to tell you we don't know yet, but maybe one day. And that continued until I realized that all of these skills that I had doing a PhD in astrophysics and data science and all of the AI skills I have were completely transferable. And so I made the tough decision when I finished my PhD to choose a postdoc that wasn't quite in my area of expertise. It was a little bit different. And it was actually decision support. So when people are really stressed, it could be in a space setting, it could be in a defense setting, it could be any setting. How are they making good decisions and how do we monitor that? I did that, continued on, and over many different projects and things have contributed my skills across not only space and astrophysics, but medical imaging, and really proud to lead our microgravity platform at Swinburne as well. So we've sent 6 different payloads to the International Space Station, and 7 and 8 are going up next year, and all of them are dedicated to inspiring the next generation and giving them educational tools and experiences. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Natavan. I'm leading Strategy and Business Development Direction at Azar Cosmos. This is the satellite operator and space agency based in Baku, Azerbaijan. It's very happy to be here since I am attending IACs since 2019, and it has been always a pleasure to meet space community, and it's already 7th time that I am attending IAC. So my role at Azar Cosmos is mainly to shape the future of space, not only at our organization, but also at national level. And in this regard, I am also the national coordinator of World Space Week, Azerbaijan. And for the last 3 years, I'm involved in a lot of space activities in order to boost space ecosystem in Azerbaijan. So for me, space is a very dynamic place that you learn a lot every day and you're never bored. And I have never imagined that I'll be staying in one study for 8 years, but I'm already enjoying it, and it sounds like 8 days. It is too fast. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, based on those stories, I do want to do a little impromptu poll because my interest in space started young also. I'll say it was age 3 when I saw Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong walk on the moon. So let me just ask Atsushi and Nadavan, what age, if you can remember, did you first become interested in space?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, actually, maybe I'm not say this, but when I seriously considered on space was 23,
Okay.
something like that. Since
Okay.
before that, I was always playing soccer on ground.
Ah, very good. Yeah. Good, good. Thank
Yeah.
you. Nadavan?
For me, I think it was about my school years, and my aunt used to making joke that Yuri Gagarin will take you to the space when I used to be a child. Yes.
Very good. Yeah, so I was just thinking about that because part of our discussion now will shift to how do we do public engagement and across all of the means to reach out to the world. In many times that involves reaching the youngest, those in school, and starting with the new generation. But I also think, Atsushi, I'm glad that you came a little bit later, still very young, I think, but a little, because the point is that it's not only for school-age children at any point that this engagement can begin. So I want us to maybe kind of keep a little bit of that in mind. All right, so now I'm going to start into the first part of our discussion. Again, I'll ask each of our panelists to give a little bit of a perspective, and we'll start, Nadavan, with you, and we'll work our way backwards this time. And the place I want to start is to talk about the situation today. What's our current foundation? And maybe 2 aspects of that. So if you could, and you could talk about as much as you want on either one, but today, what is it that drives the public fascination with space? Why are we successful? What are the things that help the public to be engaged? But also, what are the gaps? What are some of the things that maybe aren't happening, or where are we not being as successful? And if you have any examples under either of those, please. So,
Yes,
Nadavan?
thank you very much. So I think space became very accessible when commercialization started, I would say about 10 years ago, and etc. And after the commercialization started, everybody saw that it is not something unreachable. It's accessible for everybody, even for students and for school children. And when the launch cost of the launch reduced dramatically, and now everybody was in a place to plan about the space missions, yet it be picosat, CubeSat, or big satellites. And I think it just accelerated overall process. And what we see now as a gap, I would say, is about lack of human talent. I have heard a lot that even attending European Space Conference and other conferences in Paris and etc., everybody was saying that that there is four places, I would say, let's say for space engineering, but for four places, only two is competing, actually not competing, because there is an oversupply of the job places, but unfortunately human capital is still lacking. And in this regard, I believe that such public engagement strategies play a crucial role in order to increase awareness and say that it is accessible and everybody can part of the space industry. For instance, I am not let's say, engineer, right? I have graduated from world economics and international business and doing my MBA. And now I am part of the space industry doing business development and strategy. So it means there is a room for everybody to be part of this community. But for this one, I believe the main gap is about human capital. And if we talk about world example, I don't know how it's happening in other worlds, but in Azerbaijan, whenever we attend the events and etc., and we ask, what do you know about space and what fascinates you muchly? They say that Elon Musk, firstly, because I think what SpaceX has done in terms of reducing the prices and making it accessible to everybody, and also about Starlink project and etc. So as a figure, I believe he played a role that everybody started to get more engaged in space and get more popular with that. So if one private company and others can do it, now they have ideas, we can do it as well. So this is how I see from my own perspective. Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, Sarah, same question?
Excellent. So I think I'll start with where we are at the moment, and I think we're doing an okay job. I think there is a surge in interest in space. It's certainly not the Apollo era where it was the space craze, right? But I often do a lot of different school talks with young kids, middle-aged kids, and then senior kids. And the young children, the ones who are just getting into school, they're always obsessed with two things. It's dinosaurs and it's space. And it's because they're sciences that are magical and wonderful because you learn about it and you're in awe. You cannot be in, you can't not be in awe learning about a dinosaur or learning about a black hole. It's amazing. And they're gateway sciences to those STEM skills. And that's really what we need in space. It's not just people who want to go to space as astronauts, want to build rockets or maybe be an astrophysicist. It's that whole plethora of those STEM skills, especially when we're thinking about satellites and Earth observation and what we're going to do there. And so I think we're doing an okay job, but I think we can do better. And it starts really young. And it also, we really need to think about inclusion as well. I know in Australia, we see in a couple of different surveys that children of all genders tend to be quite interested in STEM topics when they're younger. When they get into high school, that those more senior ages, that drops, especially for female students. And we're not sure why. There's different programs that are targeting trying to increase that, but diversity is really key when we're thinking about building up the next generation. We need all people in space, especially with a shortage of people with qualified skills and jobs like that. So that's something I think we can do better. And I might just highlight real quick something that I think is really fun, and I'm very biased because it's one of the programs I help run, is we've created this kit that can go into schools where they actually get to work with samples that have been to space. So it's not just learning about space, it's actually working with things that have flown to the International Space Station and back. And through that, the feedback that we're getting from teachers and from parents and from the students themselves is that is just as awe-inspiring as when they first learned about a black hole or a dinosaur. It's tangible. It's something that they can physically see, touch, grow, all of those things. At the moment, we're doing seeds. And something as simple as that might be a way to continue that engagement as students get a little bit older. So that's something I'm very proud about.
Great, thank you very much. All right, Candace.
Yes. So Sarah, I love this last example that you gave. I always tell everybody it starts with space, it never ends with space. And I am absolutely the product of public engagement with space. So, I talked about the being, 5 years old and getting the little toy Sputnik. When I was 6 years old, I was going to science fairs, and I was so I made a transistor radio. Now, today I tell everybody, at 6 years old, I expect kids to be, making their own rockets and satellites. And Theo, you are here today, and I'm going to talk with you later about that. My 6-year-old, a little bit older, but still. And then when I was 8, my dear friend, he was 60, I was 8, and he had the United States' largest ham radio station. He was actually one of the founders of Northrop Grumman. And I would go every Sunday to call around the world so this was 1960, during the Cold War. And when I was 10, my father, who was at the White House with President Kennedy, 1962, working on the Apollo mission, he said to my 5th grade class, 10-year-olds, that when we have satellites, we will have satellites for education, for entertainment, for emergency services, for weather services. And this is 1962. And when we have wars, we will have wars with satellites, and we will have peace on Earth. Now, he got just about everything right except for the peace on Earth, but we're still working on that. And so also, I have to tell you, I have never, ever done a public-sponsored project. So I have been doing, quote unquote, new space for the last 50 years, 50 years, okay? So everything that I started, SES, Teleport Europe, Europe Online, Iridium, ILS, they are all privately sponsored. And so I think that it is very important to inspire. I think that inspiration is really, what can you do with space? And it was funny because first of all, I'm a very proud vice chair of the World Space Week to my wonderful chair, Stan. But I'm also a member of the Council of the Singapore Space and Technology think tank. And I was speaking at a conference, and everybody there was about 30 years younger. I'm not kidding. And so, whereas I was saying, I got the bug about using space to do things to help planet Earth. A lot of them had grown up with Star Trek. And so they were inspired by going into space. And you know what? It doesn't really matter. What matters is the inspiration. And I think that, governments and the public and, can really, find use cases such as today, such a beautiful day, where they are inspiring people to use space to do, to help humanity, to help the planet, to do medical exploration, to do business, to save the oceans, etc. So that's just a little bit my take.
Thank you, Candice. Okay, Atsushi.
Yes, speaking about the public engagement strategy for space, I think it's very, very good question. So let me ask all of you here in the audience a question. So I think everybody can raise a hand, but let me ask a question. How many of you think about space every day, even in 1 minute? Can you raise a hand? Right, and look around. It's not everybody. So this is IAC Space Conference, but not still yet. So I think this is a reality. We have to take it very seriously. So think about space engagement. Although we use iPhone or smartphones, you guys everybody uses a Google Map. Google Map requires space technologies. So everybody uses space. Space is already incorporated into daily life. But most of the people doesn't care about it. So it's very shame. So when I ask the same question to my friends, family, nobody raises hands. So what I have to do as a person who works in the space industry is to increase the hands. And to increase the funds who would like to engage more space. And the unique part of space is fascinations. Also, people who doesn't think about space every day, but they are very, very fascinated to hear about space. So I have a lot of artists, creators who would like to work with the space industry or space company or space thing, but they don't know how to reach out. So I think maybe this is only in Japan, but I would like to fill in that gap so that the more people can be engaged with space. So yeah, this is my message.
Great, thank you very much. So I think that was, for me, a very useful tour across the landscape of where we are today. And I'll just share a couple of things that struck me as my colleagues were speaking. And I love the term, and I'm going to use this, the gateway science that builds on that sort of natural sense of awe that I agree that space and dinosaurs both share, and other things. And you're right. And then I think too, that Nadavan, the commercialization and that interest that's there, there's some things that are really sort of making it more apparent to our consciousness. Atsushi talking about, yes, things like our iPhones and our devices, that when we think about it, which we may or may not, but when we realize these are through GPS and maybe even before long with the direct-to-device kinds of satellite communications, even more sorts of connectivity into our daily lives. And Candace, the point about having concrete ways to start with things like building radios and those hands-on activities, I think are all fantastic. So all of those, I think, are good springboards for us to really get to the title of the session today, which is Beyond the Buzz. So there are clearly a number of things that help to create, call it the buzz, the enthusiasm, the initial engagement that we see. And then there are also gaps. There are things that then cause people to maybe get distracted or for whatever reason move into other fields so they don't continue in a STEM domain. Or when it comes to budgets, as you were talking about, Atsushi, they don't support maybe the idea of investing in space from public funds or being a part of private activities that can be helpful. So there's obviously a need to continue to do better. And I think that's why we all share the interest in being here today to discuss that. So that'll be the set of questions I'd like to turn to now for my colleagues, which is, what can we do to sustain the momentum? Once the momentum is there, once the spark is there, once the awe is there, how can we begin to move that public engagement in a strategic manner forward in a more sustainable way? And so there's a second kind of a related question around schools, and maybe it connects to schools, maybe it doesn't. If you want to weave schools and academic sort of outreach into that, that's fine. If you have other ideas, that's fine as well. For this round, I think let's start in the middle. So Sarah, maybe I'll start with you.
Sure.
And then we'll loop around this way in your thoughts, please. Where do we go from here, Sarah?
It's an excellent question. And I think we need to have, it's that opportunities piece. So people can be inspired and engaged and really excited, but not have a place to go, not have a thing to slip into. And I think this happens a lot with students, both from when you're trying to transition from high school into maybe university or whatever career you're interested in, but especially at university when we have students who are so excited and so engaged. The bit that continues them on is having opportunities. So it might be being able to mentor for a different program, or go and talk to schools, or help work with research groups, or have just a peer mentor that they can learn from and hear about what there might be for them. And I think an even more important piece is, away from that kind of school setting or that learning environment, is industry and public engagement. So government-sponsored programs that they could be part of, industry-sponsored graduate programs that they have a home to go to. Because I think there's a lot of potential for people to slip through the cracks and go somewhere where there is a place for them. And I think that's something that I'm really passionate about. I get so many incredible students, both from high school who we've now seen come into university, and university undergraduates who we've seen go into PhDs, where they just needed that mentor or that opportunity to really solidify what they were interested in. And sometimes it might be that they do an opportunity and it's not for them, but they're learning skills along the way and they're learning where they might fit in. So I think that's something we can potentially do.
Great, thank you. Nadavan?
I totally agree with Sarah that there should be continuity of all those programs that we are offering to school children or students or youngsters. So I would like to give some examples from our case. For instance, for the last 3 years, we are doing World Space Week, celebrating it in Azerbaijan, and doing a lot of public awareness events. And gradually, we decided to set up Space Academy. And it was set up 2 years ago. And now with Space Academy, we are doing a lot of events, competition. One is Aperçav about competition to visualize how they see space in the future. And also, we managed to provide funding to students to present their papers at IAST. For the last 2 years, we are doing it, and currently 54 students from Azerbaijan attending IAST to present their papers in Sydney. Last year in Milan, there was another 50 students. So all this we are doing in order to provide the past, the continuity of the programs, that they can find the places where you can network, where you can make a lot of, let's say, good noises, about space and what's happening in Azerbaijan. And the other program that we have done is a mentorship for women program. And in this program, each year we had 5 mentees. And I'm very proud that 2 of those mentees are now also attending IAC in Sydney, presenting their papers. So it means we don't want to end the program with one milestone only. There should be always continuity. What would they do if they have graduated from the program? What is the next? For this question, we always think about the new programs and the continuity, so they end up in a society that it will nurture itself. So it will be self-sustained. So they will become maybe head of startups, right? They will own new startups. So for us, it's very important. It's like planting seeds to everybody and see that, of course, it needs nurturing. And for nurturing, it's about the programs, about the events, about the continuity of journey. And when those plants grow to the big trees, then I think as an agency or as a, let's say, organization, we achieved our goals.
No, that's great. Let me ask one follow-up question on the Space Academy. Yes. Is that publicly funded or privately funded or a combination? How do you do that?
Well, it's a combination, I would say. So either it is being funded by the universities or Ministry of Education or Ministry of Youth and Sport. For instance, the sponsorship of all the students coming here was done either by their own universities or by the Ministry of Education or Ministry of the Youth and Sport. So, but here we are doing it under the umbrella of Space Academy because we are encouraging all those universities that they should invest in their students and also ministry. And besides, there are also some private companies, they are getting interested into sponsoring some events. So currently one of the projects the Academy is doing with the Brazilian Space Agency is about developing Picosat and sending it to the space. So it will launch something in 30 days, if I'm not mistaken. And it's going to be the first project that all Azerbaijani school children were involved to build and see how it will go to the space. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, that's inspiring. Great. Okay, Atsushi.
I totally agree with Sarah and Natban. That was a very great activities. And actually, as a space at a private company, we do kind of pretty a close approach. What we do is that within our company, of course, there's a limit resources. So we collaborate with a lot of different industries. For example, travel agencies, insurance companies, and then maybe you can hear why. In Japan, it's a very unique ecosystem. The travel agency has a Japanese-wide network in every single schools, which is more than 10,000. 10,000. So if I can convince or to be part of them, then I can reach out to those 10,000 schools to do the space programs. And same as the insurance company too. Insurance company has a lot of shop or their places in the entire region of Japan, and they closely work with the Japanese government in each regions. And those government embodies, prefectures would like to do new things related with space. So we work with the insurance companies to provide how the non-space company can do together the business in space. So this is my approach, so that the more people can be involved, then the more engagement will be increased.
That's wonderful. So I like this theme of sort of partnership. And the partnership may depend on the local circumstances about what partner networks are there, but it sounds like that tapping into that's pretty important. Candace, what are your thoughts for how we go forward from here and do better?
Celebrate, celebrate. Seriously, if you have a success, put it in that window, and also don't forget, in my growing up, we had President Kennedy who said, we're going to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And so he really did inspire this whole generation. And we celebrated every single, milestone. And also, I just want to, so Stan and I have been working on a project which isn't yet ready, but we hope maybe we'll be able to announce it next year. But we've been working with the Smithsonian Science Education Center. And they are not only in the United States, they are also, for instance, here in Australia. And what they have found is that by teaching students, young people, about space, that this is probably the best foundation for them to then go on to study science. Now, I'm going to be totally controversial here. I have 5 degrees in music. I have no degree in business, in physics, in engineering. Now, I was incredibly fortunate. I grew up in this family. My father did the first satellites for the United States government. He did the first private satellites in the world. He was the head of military telecommunications. So, at the age of 5, I was learning also about tropospheric, scatter networks and et cetera. But I do want to, also mention Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr was so trying to find a solution to the torpedoes that were destroying the Allied ships during World War II. And she had the idea to do basically what is called CDMA, which is code division multiplex, by using the scrolls of a player piano. So there were slots in between, like 2 notes or 3 notes and then a slot. And it was that type of thinking that actually she created CDMA, and she had the patents on it. So, it does take out of this world thinking. It does take big thinking, and always to be purpose-driven. Whenever I start something, I don't say, I'm going to make a television direct broadcast satellite. No, I say, I want to bring freedom of choice for viewing. I'm not going to do a broadband internet. I want to bring broadband internet. I called it mothers communicating with mothers. So this is what we need to do. We need to be purpose-driven. And I'm excited about this generation now and the one that is coming up, because they are going to come up with solutions, just as I'm thinking today about networks for the universe, with data centers, with space-based solar power, with 3D printing that we just create space stations in the world, with one of my angel investees just won the NASA Deep Space Food Challenge, etc. So always, if we can just inspire people to find solutions, and then to also educate them about the possibilities of space.
Candace, that's great. And we have a little time after this. You can do an encore, and we'll do some more singing. That'd be fantastic.
Sure.
Yeah. I actually like.
I'll save it for the end.
Good. I like the connection to music because the music of the spheres, right?
Absolutely.
There's always a resonance there, if you will, with space, and then the other part though about I think having that inspirational, knowing what those things are, right? That will reach out and that will be compelling. And then bringing those into the networks. That's sort of what I'm taking from across some of the discussions. And what are those connect points? And then how do we magnify them? And we really need to have both. So we've got a couple more minutes. I'm going to ask at least one more question if there's time. And then for the audience, I'll say we are planning to have some time for questions at the end. So start to be thinking about those. And then we'll have somebody who can bring a mic around. So we'll have a chance to get some Q&A with my fellow panelists here. But before we do that, let me ask about measuring the impact of our activities, because many of us are in business or working even in government to try to explain why should public funds go to this, why should private funds go to something like this? Well, of course, because space is cool, and that's enough of an answer for me. Sometimes it does help to have other ways to communicate that as well, to reinforce the sort of what is the benefit. We could talk about, things like what STEM researchers do and how that's been more beneficial. And there might be a number of ways to think about this in terms of measurement or description of the benefit so that others who are going to help us have the resources to do the convincing can themselves be convinced. So in terms of sequence, Candace, we'll start with you this time, and then we'll do our reverse order through Atsushi and then back around. But Candace, how would we measure impact?
Yeah. So in 1981, I fell in love and married my husband, who was, I always say he was a pianist, but he was also the ambassador of Luxembourg to the United States. And in 1982, the prime minister of Luxembourg came to Washington and said, we have 3 crises. We have a steel crisis in Luxembourg. We have a broadcast crisis. The RTL, Radio Television Luxembourg, was going south. Everybody wanted to buy it because they were a private broadcaster, and they were one of 2 private broadcasters throughout Europe. And all of the governments did not like the fact that they could say what they wanted to say and not what the government was telling them to say. And they had a 3rd crisis with the monetary union, with Belgium, franc. And so the prime minister was looking for a 4th economic pillar. Now, me having grown up in this amazing family, I always tell everybody I'm the luckiest person in the world, I know, and I am. I said, and I had seen what had happened and what could happen if you used space to provide a better life for people. And so I told the prime minister, I said, you could have a satellite system. This is summer 1982. In February 1983, he called me and he said, Candace, I need to have your satellite system. I dropped everything. I went to Luxembourg and I created Société Européenne des Satellites in 1983. Now, the problem is that, of course, I was only doing something that was private. It never occurred to me to do anything governmental. And every single government was against us because we were very much disrupting the status quo. Luxembourg is 600,000 people, 400,000 at that time, 600,000 people today. And they did not have an aerospace industry. So to protect or to give contracts to. And they always were private. And so the government broadcasters, were saying, whoa, what are we going to do? There's going to be this, system coming up, and it's not going to be controlled by, the government broadcasters. And we're going to let in private broadcasters, new people like Rupert Murdoch, my dear friends from Australia, and Silvio Berlusconi and Leo Kirsch and Canal Plus. And they were very much afraid. Now, I didn't know the prime minister always kind of kept, the really this attack away from me. And he just said, Candace, you just do your thing. So, but at one point it got to be kind of difficult because I was really all alone. It was such a secret project that he could not ask the parliament to even have a budget for it. And so I kind of, used my own money to go around Europe, do the market study, et cetera, et cetera. I called my dad. I said, Daddy, I need to have a franchise. He dictated it to me over the phone because we didn't even have telex or telefax at that time, telefax. And so I went to the Prime Minister and I said, I need a little bit of help. And he said, okay, Candace, no problem. I will get you some help. So the next day, the head of the tax division comes to the Prime Minister's office. And I go, whoa, this is not the help that I was talking about. But in the Prime Minister's mind, the fact that he was going to give a franchise to a private satellite company and that this private satellite company was going to pay fees to the government, license fees to the government, he saw it clear as day. And so they gave a 10-year holiday, tax holiday, to SES. Stan, on the day that the tax holiday ended, SES, Société Européenne des Satellites, largest satellite system in the world, was the largest single taxpayer in Luxembourg and still is today. That's impact.
Very good, very good. So we can measure it through tax generation. That's fantastic. Atsushi.
Well, measuring the impact is, I think, very, very difficult and tough always. I can tell you two aspects. One is it takes a long time. Like, nobody knows, like, speaking of the cadence when she was 5, nobody knows she was here. She's here, like this, and they're giving us such huge impact. So it takes time in terms of the education. So I had an opportunity to visit Marshall Space Center in NASA, where is that? But anyway, there's a space camp, and since 1989, lots of the child go visit their space camp and to train the astronaut. And since then, I think a lot of our alumni became a real astronaut in each nations. So that takes time, but it's very, very important. Another point of us, the monitoring the impact of the space, is that to be connecting with the business side more. I was luckily involved with a project called Kibo Space Studio. In the ISS, we have a Kibo module. Kibo means wish in Japanese anyway. So we connect ISS and ground with our telecommunication systems, and you can directly speak with the astronaut with video systems. And during the COVID, nobody cannot go out, so we launched project Kibo Space Studio. So we collected their hope and wish from the public through the Twitter, and we showed it from the space. And there was more than 5 million viewers during the show from all over the world because of the power of the internet and YouTube and Twitter. And we have a lot, the project has a lot of sponsors like Coca-Cola or others. And how we can measure it is that the number of viewers and engagement and also the purchasement. So I think there's 2 different ways for how to measure the impact, but it's always challenging, but it's worth to challenge.
That's great. And I'll just pull out one thing that you said, and one thing I think you sort of implied. The one thing you said certainly was, the digital media is very conducive to measurement. If we just do that, the tools are sort of built into the system and the fabric of that. But I was also intrigued by the point you made about Space Camp and those who then go on to do other things, maybe be astronauts, maybe other things in the STEM world. Doesn't have to just be active in space, as Sarah said earlier. So that sort of longer term connectivity and measuring that in some way that helps to capture the value of the output of something or the downstream effects. That's a little harder, but also I think that was woven into what you were saying too. I like that. Okay, Nadavan.
I would like to share some examples in two directions. Since Azar Cosmos is a bit unique to the industry because we are satellite operator and space agency as a one entity, so I would like to share impact in two directions. When it comes to the satellite operator activities, and Candace mentioned great point about connectivity, delivering content to the households and etc. I think in this regard, since we are not a very big satellite operator, right? And when we look at our population, it's about 10 million people. And when we started in 2010 as a satellite operator, we never imagined that after 10 years, we will be in a position collaborating with more than 54 countries and with more than 200 companies, delivering the contents in 5-6 languages too. TV channels and etc. Rounding 200 TV and radio channels, and also delivering connectivity to 2/3 of the African continent. I think if we put in figures, that's the impact in case of if you look at from our commercial background and also from our satellite operator background. But when it comes to our agency hat, with our agency identity, I will say measuring impact, it doesn't have immediate result. Because all those public engagement strategies and organizing the public awareness events, it always takes time. Because people need to digest this information and to see if they can find what excites them and etc. And along the journey, I would say that since 2018, when we started to do a lot of public awareness events, now we see the results after 4 or 5 years. How? I will say, for instance, some of our alumnus decided to establish their own association about space engineering. And they collect all the space engineers who's studying this field and doing some small events and etc. So I think this kind of steps are the impact of public engagement strategies that we have been doing something 4 or 5 years ago. So I saying, and also I agree with panelists that it takes time. It doesn't have immediate access results, but in the long run, I believe it boosts the space ecosystem.
Great, thank you. Okay, last one before we go to audience questions. Sarah.
Yes. So I think I agree with all of the panelists that you can measure impact in slightly different ways, from dollar value to numbers to anecdotal evidence of what is happening. And I think the most important one, though, is over time. So I think we covered that a little bit across all of these, is that it takes time to see true impact, whatever that impact might be measured as, but you need to have a strategy for what is that measurement going to be. So I think what can be really easy these days to fall into the trap of is views means impact, which not necessarily. We live in a digital age, which is a fantastic thing for us to have. And sometimes it's easy to see something with 1 million views, but it might be incorrect information. I think we also live in an age where misinformation is quite scary, to be frank. And so you want continuing educational tools, inspirational tools, and you want to be able to measure that through a few different ways. So I think government programs, academic programs can have these longer term measurements for attitudes in STEM, for where people go for jobs, all of those different things. And digital measurements are still very, very important, but it's how do we use them accurately over time, and can we use them in our favour to inform good digital strategy, which is something that I'm really passionate about across my platforms.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, and so for me, I think one of the takeaways is that it is important to measure, because that, being able to show that impact governmentally, societally, commercially, feeds the funding, feeds the sort of enablers for us then to continue the outreach and that engagement. So I think that's all super helpful. Okay, so for audience questions, we'll go to that now. I don't know if it's possible to turn the lights down just a little bit so we can see. We can somewhat see out there. I mean, turn the floodlights down here or turn the house lights up, one or the other. I can see pretty well, but there we go. I'm a little less blind now. Okay, and then I see we've got, I guess, do you have a microphone? So, okay, first question, please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I just wondered, how can initiatives like the World Space Week move beyond what some may see as symbolic outreach to meaningful engagement in underserved areas like the SIDS, let's say the Caribbean region, to build genuine local capacity, do some of the things that you've been talking about doing, inspire the youths, and ensure that these voices are also represented in shaping a truly global space future?
That's a great question. Maybe I'll take that one
I
if
was gonna say, you go
that's
ahead.
all right. So I think it's what you asked about. If I say the words back correctly, if I don't, let me know. But the sort of democratization of both engagement and in the voice around space is in fact, a core mission of World Space Week Association and World Space Week. So the intent to do that, I think, is there. I think the how, and I'll be the first one to say, the fact today is that it's uneven, and part of that comes to some of the realities of funding, and some of the realities of the way we have our partnership structured, which relies on fantastic people like Nanavan to be a national coordinator. And so there's a national coordinator system that helps to do that. But one of the things I could talk with you afterwards about ways to bolster the national coordinator piece is one, and we also have some mentoring activities to help to raise that. But the invitation and the purpose is there, and love your energy, and we'd love to find ways to continue to grow with you. Okay, next question. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for a very engaging panel. My name is Jaren Chu, and I come from Taiwan. And one of my roles is I advise Taiwan Space Agency. And my question is, I'm curious from the perspective of all of you, what are the things that a public agency with limited resources, brand new, we're like 2.5 years old, should be prioritizing in terms of public engagement that it can uniquely do versus what we should entrust to nonprofits, private industry, science communicators? What is it that we have to do first in order to help enable everyone else to go do what they're good at? Thank you.
Please, Sarah.
I think one thing that is really important for agencies to do across the world is to liaise across industry, academia, and all of the sectors to bring together meaningful projects and to help not silo them. So there's often, you'll often see it happen where you'll have fantastic initiatives that have never met or talked to each other or don't share funding or don't have opportunities to physically work together. And I think an agency is a perfect opportunity to have that oversight and that connectivity to say, we're going to bring X, Y, and Z in. It might have different funding streams, it might have different personnel, but together we can actually make something that's more robust and more accessible and more inclusive across the country as well, because often things are siloed into the areas that you live, the states that you live. So I think that's a really important thing to consider, is how do you liaise with that? And I think that would be great potentially for you to take away.
Candace, yeah, you have
Yes.
something to add?
Hello, and congratulations on doing your Taiwan Space Agency. It's fabulous. And, Luxembourg only started their space agency 5 years ago. So even though we had SES and, 40 years ago. So I think, if I were starting a space agency today, I think the most important thing would be to ensure that the country that is having the space agency puts together a very good regulatory framework. Now, of course, you can build on what is going on with the ITU, etc. But, in German, we say Planungssicherheit, so planning security. Any company that is going to do something needs to know that they can count on that their investment is going to be protected by a regulatory framework. Not only frequencies, but also business, etc. And I think that also a space agency can give grants that are based on finding private money to jobs. So and you can attract companies from around the world. It doesn't always have to be born in a country. A company can also be, or a country can be home to a company. So just some things you want to think about.
Yes, Naraban.
I would like to add some points because we are also very young as a space agency. It was established in 2021. With limited resources, it's a challenge that we have went through as well. I would like to say that what would be beneficial is like to organize info tours to universities and with your colleagues and engineers to give information, inspire, and also to involve them in the international platform, which is non-profit organizations such as World Space Week Association, SGAC, and other platforms. And if you can do it, also that would be great if you involve other international speakers. I would say that space community is very kind. They love to help, and I believe you will find many people who would be willing to be part of the webinars or discussion at some of the local universities in Taiwan.
Great. Okay, we're at our formal time, but I was told at the beginning that we may have a little flexibility to go over. So if I can take a poll of my panelists, if we're okay to stay, for another couple of minutes, we'll continue because I see several questions. And then I see one up there, and then I also, yes, with the microphone. And then we've got a student group here that I will give the microphone to next. But yeah, please, your question?
Hi, my name is Claude Bloom with the University of Alabama, Huntsville. And Huntsville, Alabama, by the way, is where NASA Space Flight Center is, Marshall. My question is, as a student group, I am a person who pursued an idea and kind of formed my own research group and have obtained funding. But I found that there is, number one, a massive disconnect between the expectations of what students can do and should be doing in academia versus in industry, where industry is more open to students developing new technology and products that kind of trying to advance on a TRL scale, while academia kind of think, you're a student, what are you doing? You need to be working on your classes and not trying to chase whatever it is you're chasing. And that resulted in where you cannot systematically get professional help on a lot of things because the authority that can give you useful information often choose not to, and the people who is willing to help you don't have access to that kind of information. Do you see any way around that kind of in the development where students kind of start developing their own devices and maybe they don't go anywhere at all, but learning through that process rather than just through classes?
So question about like students and mentoring or something, Sarah? Is that something?
Yeah, I can answer from my academic experience, I guess. I think it's very different at every institution. I think one thing to consider is oftentimes academics are pretty overloaded, and we absolutely love our jobs. And at least for me specifically, and I can speak for all of my colleagues, we want to be able to help all of the students that we can. And so we make that a priority for us at least, to try and find where can student projects fit in, where can we mentor within the bounds of what our expertise is. And I think, unfortunately, it's not a solution that will fix everything, but it's really finding those people who will take the time and the considerations. But I also think one way to communicate that back to potentially the academics that you might work or study under is the benefit for everybody. The fact that you are putting together something is skills for you to go further in your career. It's going to make you stand out. When I'm reading CVs, when anyone's reading CVs, we look for that initiative and that proactivity. And that is something that is really vitally important. And I think maybe I'm not aware of your situation at your university, but maybe that's just not recognised quite yet. So I think it's looking for those gems of time and of people and commitments, and especially when you can work together. So it sounds like you've done an excellent job putting together your own research group and getting funding and things like that. And change certainly comes with its critical mass of interest and of importance. And I think it's a really important thing. And I encourage anyone who's in here who is an academic to think about how you can mentor, even in industry. How can you mentor the next generation? It might not explicitly be what your area of expertise is, but it is something that you can lend a hand to, even if it's just here and there. What can you do to make those things come true.
And if I may just real quickly, I mean, so many of these, countries, even though I'm American, I haven't lived in America for 40 years, but, certainly we have incubators in Europe, and this would be a perfect place for you to go. And usually they are connected with a university. And I would also talk about angel networks. I'm a VC, and chair of Seraphim Space, which is the world's largest space tech fund. But I'm also a personal angel investor, and I do mentoring every Saturday morning, 9, 10, and 11, because we say that business angels have network, experience, expertise, and some money. So.
Great. Okay, so I think we'll do one last question from the group here, and then if anybody else has other questions, then please, we'll stick around as we're able to. So yes, go ahead.
So Keith Traherne from Emu Robotics. We're an Aussie charity. Currently, this is where we do STEM competitions and we teach a lot of high school students. Currently, we're working to build a pipeline between disadvantaged high school students and the space industry, because it's great that you highlighted the fact that there's such an equal level of engagement when everyone's young, but then there's that massive drop-off. I'd like to ask, how did you mitigate that drop-off? Because that's something we really specialize in. I actually have 2 students here. If I'd quite like you or anyone else in this room to meet them. To give you an idea, one of them is now going to be doing it. They're 11 years old. They're year 11. And they are going to be doing a space internship during their summer holidays. Neither of their parents graduated high school. Like these sort of pipelines. How did you mitigate your high school years, and how did you sustain that interest?
Anybody have a story to tell there or a perspective? Atsushi, go ahead.
I'm not sure if this helps, but in Japan, there's a company, maybe iSpace, who wants to do moon. And they are founded. A founder was in the university. I think he was in the PhD or something in US. There was a Google X Prize. He didn't start a company. He just applied for the Google X Prize. And eventually, that company grows gradually, having a support, like Cadence mentioned, with BC Angels, and it becomes a company. First, they are developing small disk rover, but now they are developing huge lander to the moon. So I think, as far as you never give up, you're gonna find the solutions, and you're gonna find mentors and people who would like to support you. So don't give up and ask Cadence.
And I'd like to point back to, I think, Nadavan, your story was very relevant there about looking from the government agency standpoint to try to find opportunities to sponsor people for papers and things like that. I'll say, and your question was, how have we solved it? I don't think it is solved. I think we've sort of acknowledged it as a gap, but there are maybe some ideas or some positive examples that in some cases have been helpful. So maybe there's an opportunity to look for some of those or encourage some of the creation of some of these sponsorships through either a public entity or a private entity who would look to continue to sustain that momentum. So I do apologize. We're not going to have time for any more group questions, but I and my colleagues will be happy to stay here for a little bit for private questions afterwards. But most importantly, Candace did offer to sing one more time for us. So
I hope you will all join in. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what life is like on Jupiter and Mars. Great.
Right.